Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. I was given only 5 minutes, so I'm going to be very brief. Ever since I became chair of industrial design at Pratt, I was determined to reach out to Cooper Hewitt Museum. I believe that students of industrial design should partake in the largest industry in New York City, which is culture. And museums, great representatives of culture in New York. I wanted students, however, to see the museum not only as a resource center, but as a catalyst, as a place for creating new work, for expressing their creativity. And I was fortunate that the director of Cooper Hewitt, Caroline Bauman, was very, very receptive to my ideas. About a year ago, we started this collaboration. We were very lucky that at the time, museum was working on a show By the People, which deals with so many preoccupations which we address at our design work at the department. And this is how we met with Cynthia Smith, the curator who reviewed and guided students' projects throughout this rather long, semester-long process. And we were double lucky to get to know CaringKind, which took such good care of our students, providing them with opportunity to work with real people and real patients in solving some very real problems of today's healthcare. In conclusion, I wanted to say that this evening is by no means a concluding event. We continue our collaboration as we speak this semester with new groups of students, and we look forward to producing new work and new projects with under the guidance of Cooper Hewitt curators. So with this, I'd like to now present Louis Allen Barkan to the podium. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Constantin, for the opportunity to add CaringKind's voice to this wonderful project. There we go. We all have strengths. Many of you may know us as the former New York City chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. On December 1st, 2015, we changed our name to CaringKind to reflect our over 30 years of experience providing programs and services and resources for individuals and families affected by a dementia diagnosis. Today, as the baby boomers enter the greatest risk for dementia, the age of greatest risk for dementia, CaringKind has never been more in demand. Our clients need social work services, education and training, support groups, a wanderer safety program, and referrals to home health aides. And they can access all of these programs and services and more, all free, simply by calling us. And after many years of talking to our families, we know that we will also need products to provide comfort, protection, and efficiency for caregivers who are doing one of the hardest imaginable jobs. So how lucky are we to live in New York City, and we say that every day, where the creative and compassionate professor Alex Schwader decided to give this challenge to his design students and called on CaringKind's professional staff and our clients to add their life experience and their perspective to the work. For the past 18 months, we have watched with pride and wonder as Alex's students took on the challenge and developed products that can really change a life. What started as a pilot, an experiment in creative thinking and design, has produced a stream of fantastic products which we hope to exhibit, produce, and bring to market. And make no mistake, the market for these products is growing exponentially every year. We say that in the absence of an effective therapy, The best therapy is good care. And good care includes products that make life easier for both the caregiver and the person with dementia. By the spring, Pratt and CaringKind will have given birth to over 20 new designs and 7 more on the way. Our plan is to select some for exhibition and production, and we will be proud of both. But the day that I really look forward to is the day that I read the first letter from a client, thanking us for making life more manageable and more comfortable. And I truly hope that you will all be here on the day that I read that letter. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cody Calamayo, and I'm an industrial design graduate student at Pratt.
And my name's Aaron Green, and I'm also an industrial design graduate student, and we are so happy to be here to present these products that we and our peers have been designing for CaringKind and for people with Alzheimer's. So this is the reality that we live in. 5 million Americans have Alzheimer's, and because each person with Alzheimer's has up to 4 caregivers, the disease directly impacts at least 20 million people in this country. And as Luan said, these numbers are only projected to increase as baby boomers age.
And as we approach this design problem, we wanted to keep in mind the 3 different phases of Alzheimer's: early, middle, and late. And one thing I didn't know before I started this project was that with Alzheimer's, your brain actually physically shrinks. It's not just the losing of your memory. So we're going to discuss these phases a little bit more as we present our designs, but these were the 3 stages that we were designing for.
So we began by consulting experts at CaringKind, as well as family members and family caregivers and professional caregivers to understand behaviors of people with Alzheimer's. Common behaviors include sleepiness, wandering, agitation, anxiety, and aggression, which varies as the disease progresses. And we'll discuss more specific behaviors along with the products that pertain to that behavior.
So after working with CaringKind and learning more, we came up with some overall design mandates that each of us tried to apply to our products while keeping in mind the individual problem we were trying to solve. And one of the biggest ones was attaching new behaviors to ingrained habits. So understanding how a person is living and what the issues are and reattaching new behaviors to them. We also want to ease the role of the caretaker and family member while maintaining dignity. And something that's very important is multiplying moments of joy. We're dealing with people who this is their family, this is their loved ones, and we want to be able to contain joy in those relationships.
And all the while, we wanted to understand that, or keep in mind that designers bring assumptions and preconceptions into any situation. And so it's important to have conversations and do research that reveal those assumptions and allow us to enter that situation with a clear outlook.
So now we want to show you some of our products developed over the past 2 semesters. So the first one, and we're dealing in order of the presentation with starting in the early phase. This is a hidden kitchen. So it is a sliding stovetop cover that can cover the stove and then also move aside to allow the stove to be used. One of the things I love about this project is it allows a person with Alzheimer's and other family members to coexist in the same space and use something for 2 different purposes. This also has a hidden drawer compartment that allows things like knives to be hidden out of sight and just keep everything a little bit safer.
So this is my project. It's a clothing organizer. So one thing I noticed was that one of the problems that people with Alzheimer's face is that they might not remember to change their clothes, or they might not want to change their clothes, or they might forget which clothes are clean. So I looked for similar habits that people already employ in their daily lives to organize what they have and haven't done. So I came across the pillbox. So I decided to use that as an allegory for this project. So you fill each compartment. There are 7, 1 for each day. And these compartments fold away as you use your clothes for the week. And this helps the caregivers and the person with Alzheimer's to prepare outfits for the week ahead of time and to ease the burden of decision-making in the mornings.
And these two products deal with hobbies. So in the early phase, the person affected with Alzheimer's can still maintain a lot of their normal behaviors. So the first is a portable garden that eases some of the bending over involved in gardening, allows all your tools to be right at hand, and it eases with accessibility. And the next one is for a person who enjoys making a cocktail at home. It's a color-coded cocktail organizing set, complete with color-coded tumblers, and it attaches to a magnetic tray. So both these are great in helping you maintain your hobbies.
Now we're transitioning into the middle phase of Alzheimer's, which is generally associated with loss of language ability. So this is a game called Conversation Dice that gives, it's a game for a person with Alzheimer's and their caretaker to play together. So you roll the dice, and it uses symbols to start, kickstart conversation. So this can be both a trigger for past memories and also a way to come up with new conversations that can be a little silly sometimes. Maybe you want to start a conversation that has to do with clouds and wine at the same time. Why not?
So also in the middle phase, this is where you may need to start making some modifications to your home. And this project addresses not being able to find certain objects. So this is a series of Velcro wall tiles that can just adhere right on top of your existing wall. And it pairs with Velcro strips that you can attach to the back of objects, such as the remote. So the remote can just be stuck right next to your favorite chair while you're watching TV. And it doesn't have to be a question or a discussion every day on where the remote was or if it was moved. So it's all about adding some more accessibility.
And this is a clock that indicates whether it's day or night outside. So when the moon shape disappears, the sun appears. And so people in the middle stage often don't comprehend what the numbers on the clock mean. So this gives them an easily recognizable symbol that can help them align their internal world with the external.
And this is my project. So the behavior that I was looking at was wandering. And in the late phase, the person with Alzheimer's may suddenly have an urge or a memory. They may think that they're younger than they really are and they need to go to school or something like that. And wandering is one of the biggest challenges presented in this phase. So I wanted to design a product that discouraged people from leaving while not preventing them. It's illegal to lock somebody in their home. So this is made entirely of paper. And when it is being stored, it's completely flat. It gets attached to the back of the door. And each shelf pops down, revealing this three-dimensional photo frames that you can completely customize with family photos or reminders and notes. So it just encourages the person to get lost in a world and forget why they were even trying to leave in the first place.
And last but not least, we have the photo mirror. So people with Alzheimer's can often be startled by their own appearance in a mirror because their self-image sometimes doesn't align with the reflection that they see. So they might, for example, imagine themselves as being younger than the image that's reflected. So this project intervenes in the form of a bathroom mirror. It uses a two-way mirror that becomes a customizable photo display when lit from behind. And this allows caretakers and people with Alzheimer's to share a space. And those are our projects. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Megan Leidy, and I'm a senior at the Industrial Design program at Pratt Institute.
Hi, my name is Jerry. I am a junior. So both of our classes spend the semester working with the idea of homelessness and the hungry. More specifically, working with the organization CHIPS. Today, we are presenting on behalf of our fellow classmates and introducing many of the projects worked on in the past year.
CHIPS is the Park Slope Community Help. The nonprofit organization runs two operations, upstairs as a women's shelter for prenatal and postpartum homeless women, and downstairs as a soup kitchen and food pantry available to a diverse population. CHIPS operates to assist the growing hungry and homeless population of New York City, where the average age of homelessness is only 9 years old, and over 62,000 homeless sleep in shelters every night. The cause of the housing and food insecurity epidemic is often misinterpreted as an individual attribute, where the root of the problem lies in the structural issues such as lack of affordable housing. These issues are ongoing and continually growing, which is why it is so important for us as a society to recognize them.
So CHIPS runs with the help of volunteers and the Park Slope community and its dedicated staff, amongst whom are Janice, the Director of Food Services, Denise, the Executive Director, and Sharon, the Director of Shelter Services. CHIPS receives nearly 80% of its donated food from the Park Slope Co-op and is heavily supported by its surrounding community.
Beyond our online research as a class on homelessness, students in our class actively volunteered with CHIPS to better understand the scope of the issue. To form a sense of empathy, we spent time getting to know the organization, the volunteers, and the displaced population. From our findings, we created storyboards and word maps to help identify key issues. These findings inspired our class to design a variety of systems, services, and products. And we've broken these down into 4 different categories: rest, identity, hygiene, and opportunity.
So first we have a rest. Curie constructed the In Life Tent project, which builds communities by providing housing for the homeless population. The distribution of the portable tents give the homeless the push they need to get their first steps back on track. For the goal of the project, it's not only to offer housing, but the opportunity to connect with others and build relationships. Next, we have a program called Perch, created by Aditi. She discovered that there is no existing assigned space for people to rest in the city. Aside from safety and theft concerns, most public benches have spikes or armrests between the seats, therefore preventing people from lying across. Perch would be parked outside dropping centers and provide the homeless a safe, cozy, and warm environment to relax and recover. Chris designed The Garden, a community housing concept that includes modular and sustainable microhomes with sloped rooftop gardens. It allows members of the homeless community to find refuge and safety in a comfortable environment while cultivating crops for personal consumption and selling at local markets.
We have 2 projects that approach the issue of identity within homelessness. Here we have a writing program designed by Jisoo for the homeless. This project helps increase awareness to readers and participants without requiring any special skills or funds from the participants. The participants can then express their stories in any form: text, doodles, origami, and so on. Once published, the completed books are available for sale or distribution. The authorship and fee and sales are sent to the writers or donated to support the participating organization. We have Andy, who designed Voy. Voy is a sticker with a voice of an individual who's usually voiceless and homeless. Voy welcomes them to our shared community, increases our awareness towards the homeless, and strengthens our cohesion.
And on to hygiene. So this is my project. Volunteering at CHIPS Soup Kitchen allowed me to gain valuable first-hand experience with difficulties that the homeless has to deal with on a daily basis. Public showers in New York City require expensive entry fees, while a valid ID is mandatory for access for homeless shelters. Much of the population at CHIPS lack access to both. Therefore, they wear new clothes every day found at various soup kitchens and shelters. With that in mind, I designed Mira, a mobile shower unit that is essentially a retrofitted 6x12-foot trailer. Within the unit, there is ample space for 2 showers and a changing room. Composed of colored stainless steel and natural wood, its interior not only allows for easy cleaning, but also a safe and inviting personal space for the displaced to shower in comfort. Improvement of personal hygiene can greatly strengthen self-esteem and restore hope to their lives. Next, we have Heijun, who designed Easy Wash, which is a detachable outdoor wash fountain that connects to an existing water service line so that homeless community can wash their face, hands, and feet.
And lastly, we have Opportunity. Here, Ryan designed DARS, which is a donation system and vehicle that employs a give and take reward bias so that donors are encouraged to donate and keep donating in the future while knowing exactly how their donations are helping others. Next, we have Aisha. Aisha designed Kiosk, which is an interactive job posting booth. Kiosk enables accessibility of different types of day labor opportunities to a population in need of extra money. Ordinary citizens can post jobs with the Kiosk app that will then be seen on the kiosk on the street. An example could be someone moving furniture from one apartment to the other. Kiosk helps the population break free from the cycle of poverty by connecting ordinary citizens who need help with the population who can provide this help. Kiosk challenges the dialogue of who is in need of help and creates a symbiotic relationship between people in a community and an opportunity to discover and build skills. For my own project, I focused on the idea of designing with chips. I spent most of the beginning observing and interacting with those at the organization, and I left my process open-ended in the beginning, allowing my findings to determine whether I would design a product, a system, or a service. I was drawn to CHIP's strong connection with the Park Slope Food Co-op, where they receive most of their food donations. However, much of this food becomes scrap and then is thrown away. The connection from the co-op to CHIPS felt incomplete, a cycle that needed to be further developed. I questioned then, what would it look like if CHIPS gave back to their community and continued this cycle? This question led me to community gardening as a therapeutic activity for the impoverished and where one could engage with their community. I mapped out potential collaborations and interviewed members from the community, like I've mapped out here, such as community gardens and the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. So my final design is called Grassroots. It is a job training program connecting the CHIPS population with the community gardens, allowing them to give back to their community and gain needed skills such as composting or landscaping for employment in the green collar sector. Certain jobs would include positions at the Botanical Gardens or Park Slope. Grassroots is designed to break the cycle of poverty and provide opportunities and connections with the community. This project opened my eyes to a new type of design. It inspired me to go back to the idea of waste and continue it. I have received a grant from the Pratt Center of Community Development to continue the project with CHIPS and establish a compost program and to strengthen their connection with the surrounding community. We would like to thank our fellow teachers and advisors on this project, CHIPS for their collaboration, and the Cooper Hewitt for allowing us to present our projects today. Thank you.
Seems to be advancing here. Just 1 second, technical difficulties. See if it stays there. Nope. Let's see if it stays there. No. Sure. I don't know if it has to do with that. Okay. Maybe this paper.
Sorry, let me just. Apologies, everyone. Hopefully, we can resolve this. There was something set where it was automating it. Sorry, guys. Close your eyes, yes. Thanks, everybody. Somehow every slide got a
Stealing my thunder.
automation. We weirdly tested all of this earlier, guys. So why it's doing it now is. It should work now. Okay. Hopefully.
All right, thanks so much. My name is Garrett Hurley. I'm a certified prosthetist and orthotist. I'm the Chief Innovations Officer and co-founder of Limb Innovations. I'm very honored to be here to address the two questions presented to the panel. First shown here in understanding the needs of the underserved community, and how can we foster deep insight and promote creative thinking. So first, I want to give a disclaimer that although I'm on this design panel, I'm actually not a designer by trade. I'm a prosthetist, but I am a designer at heart. Here I am at 8 years old with my first prototype of a robot. And I want to answer the questions presented to the panel through the context of the infinite socket. And this begins with aiming at a specific area of focus. And for me, that was identifying prosthetics, and then more specifically identifying the interface with the human body known as the prosthetic socket. I got very interested in where technology meets the human body and how it fits to the human body. And I immersed myself within that field. I was trained here in the United States and worked for over a decade here, and also worked abroad in countries like Haiti and India and Mexico and Nicaragua. And I spent a lot of time listening to the users, asking questions, and really getting to know the space here in the United States and abroad. And I started to identify areas of opportunity. And for my specific application, I identified that making a prosthetic socket is a very labor-intensive and iterative process, mold-based process. So I actually very much enjoyed the process of making a prosthetic limb and the hands-on process that went into it, but it is a long process, and it leaves the patient waiting. And so it delays care. So I identified that as a limiting factor. I also identified that prosthetic sockets were not adjustable, and people with amputation, like all of us, have bodies that change with time and on a daily basis. And these changes affect their fit and the interface with their technology. And even though the prosthetic sockets that I could make were very beautiful and had value, they couldn't adapt and change with the user, and there were certain bells and whistles that were coming out that helped for some adjustability, but at the core, the structural frame was still limited in its adjustability. I also identified that the designs of the prosthetic sockets didn't mimic anatomy in the way that I thought they could. They're generally made with 1 to 3 types of plastics, and these are hard plastics. And our body is not hard, and it varies in material properties a lot. And furthermore, I also identified that fields like athletic apparel and shoe industry were utilizing advanced manufacturing and advanced processing and advanced materials that were not being utilized in the prosthetic industry. That's largely due to the fact that the prosthetic sockets need to be custom molded, and yet there's also this great opportunity to leverage some of this new technology. So I began to organize the results, and more importantly, organized a team. And my co-founder and I started with the small team shown here on the left of just 4 people. And then we've grown into the larger team on the right here. And I can't emphasize enough how important the team has been throughout the process. And I wouldn't be here on this podium if it wasn't for the team and the concepts and the initial work that I did in identifying some of the need was only the start, and the team has really run with those concepts and really evolved it into much more than I could have done on my own. And I certainly give all the credit to the entire team, not just my efforts. Furthermore, we needed a space to work out of, and the TechShop provided a wonderful opportunity for us in San Francisco to utilize a shared space wherein we could keep overhead costs low and not need to invest in expensive machinery that would have accrued a lot of upfront costs. And so it's been a great opportunity to work with the TechShop and also other partnerships that I'll show at the end were key in getting us a start. Excuse me. We also needed to open our mind. We stayed focused on the needs that had been identified, but we also opened our mind to all solutions that could meet those needs. And that was a key aspect to creating something that was outside the box of what the prosthetic industry had already been doing. So we started iterating, and you got to start somewhere, right? This is obviously a very rough prototype, but we learned from it. And yes, we continued to iterate, and we tested our assumptions with the users, and we measured the results and continued to reiterate. And we not only iterated on the product itself, but on the manufacturing and distribution. And that's one thing that I would encourage young designers to consider, is that it's not only the product that will make an impact or will not determine whether or not your product can help people, but also the business plan and the distribution model that is integrated into that as well. So that shouldn't be overlooked. Eventually, we were able to launch the infinite socket transfemoral product shown on the left, and then later the infinite transtibial product on the right. And the transfemoral product has both products have many attributes. To show you a few on the transfemoral product, there's user adjustability with modular closure systems. They can tighten and loosen the fit of their prosthetic socket, and then the ischial seat can raise and lower to meet the fit needs of the patient. The brim of the prosthetic socket can raise and lower depending on the comfort that they desire and the amount of support that they need. And the structural struts of the frame can move in and out, as well as pivot side to side. And these attributes and features were not just arbitrarily created. They were created based on intense testing and verification through validating our assumptions, through validated learning. Now we have hundreds of users utilizing our prosthetic sockets throughout the nation and just starting internationally. And this is really what motivates us and drives us. It's the users out there doing amazing things. And we continue to hear wonderful stories of how people's lives are impacted by what we're doing, and that's really what keeps us going. But we don't stop there. We continue to measure the results. And here we can see that in a cohort of 75 patients, we have a statistically significant improvement of the socket comfort score, 101% improvement in that score compared to conventional prosthetic sockets that were used prior. We also are measuring the materials and comparing those materials to other prosthetic sockets, and also comparing it to anatomy, continuing the validated learning. And I hope this learning never stops, and indeed it hasn't, and I have no doubt that it will not continue, because it's very hard trying to mimic the human body, so we continue to find areas of improvement. So the points that I've addressed here are shown on the bottom, and they can be likened to what's found in user-centered design concepts and lean startup concepts. And it's an iterative process. And just to compare to some of those concepts that are already out there and some of the great work that's done there, I feel like I'm emphasizing the immersion aspect and the identification of the needs, as well as opening up to solutions that are outside the box of what's previously been done. I want to give thanks and credit to so many people and so many organizations, but here's just a few that I can name. So thanks so much for your time and the audience here. Thank you.
Great. Hi, I'm Cynthia Smith. I'm curator of By the People Designing a Better America exhibition. As Pam noted, it is on the third floor and closes February 26th. So if you haven't seen it, please go see it. Really, really wonderful, inspiring work is included. I just wanted to thank all of you for sharing your quite a range of human-centered design approaches. And I think tonight should prove to be quite a dynamic conversation between a professional innovator and with years of experience and students who are interested in designing in collaboration with underserved communities. So very excited about this conversation. So empathy, a number of you talked about that. Garrett, Erin, Cody, Jerry, and Megan, why is empathy an important skill for a designer? And how and when do you employ it in the design process? Maybe you can, we can go around and you can give me some examples of how it might have helped you develop the ideas or designs. And I think this will be interesting because some of you are presenting a group, so feel free to take from whatever you worked on, or if it comes to mind when you were part of your studio, you can bring those up. So maybe we'll start right here.
I think empathy is tremendously important in product design. We're giving real products that people hold in their hands and are going to interact with every day. And additionally, we have to have empathy for the environment and for people who manufacture the product. So empathy is something you always build from the ground up. In my product, I was dealing with preventing a wandering behavior for somebody with late-stage Alzheimer's. And that definitely requires a lot of empathy because it's hard to actually picture what that person's truly going through. So you have to absorb their situation, learn, and I really wanted the product to be something that could be adaptable. So in creating kind of an open design that the person and their caretakers and families could adapt to the use, you're having empathy for the entire realm around the product. So yeah.
So for me, I come from a theater background. And so one of the allegories, I guess, I drew upon when I started thinking about designing for people with Alzheimer's is, okay, if I were an actor assuming a role, I need to read my script, I need to get my head inside that character, and that was sort of like the guiding metaphor that I took in approaching designing with empathy. I think to do a character justice, you need to understand, their behavior that might not be so obvious on the surface level. Like maybe, it goes beyond the script. You imagine their daily life, and then you might play that out on your own. Like some actors are method actors. They play out the exact roles that their characters would do in order to feel like they are the character. So, I did a clothing organizer, so I tried assessing, okay, how do I do this myself? How do I assume other people do this in their daily lives? And then what's the disjuncture between those habits?
Was this something that in your conversations it came up, that this was something that...
Yeah, this was actually a conversation that I had with my teacher, Alex Schroeder, who deals with this issue personally. And so it built off of those conversations, yeah.
And for me, the project that I worked on with chips definitely opened my eyes, like I said, to a new kind of design philosophy and new design process, such as like human-centered design, which is very much a part of designing for empathy, in which we look towards our users and the communities we're designing for and design with them, which means treating them as our experts. And that's something that I learned a lot through the project with CHIPS. I kept my mind very open and allowed them to be my expert and them to be my research and have them fuel the fire for the direction of my project, which before I have never done a system or a service. I had been strictly product design, and so I allowed myself to keep that open mind, and basically I ended up designing a system which was very different, but has even changed how I view design now. So.
And for mine, for me, volunteering at CHIPS, you really learn that everyone has their own story, and designing for them, you really have to not only step in their shoes, but try to just comprehend the experiences they're going through. And designing for the homeless, they really have amazing stories, and to take away from that is for my project, for the shower project, it really didn't occur to me just how much they struggled with it. I thought there would be something for homeless to shower in the public, but just putting yourself in their shoes, imagining that if you were out on the street, or if you suddenly didn't have a home because of raising rent, how do you deal with it? How do you, so this has been giving me a constant reflection for every step of my project, every prototyping, and I always go back to CHIPS and talk with people just to confirm that doing the right thing here.
Well, it's interesting you talk about story. We had another public program the other day with a group out of Detroit, and the woman who was inspired to start this social enterprise was from meeting people from a women's homeless shelter and hearing their resilient stories. So this kind of thread of humanity in what you're talking about, understanding people's stories and kind of embodying that seems to be consistent. So it's very interesting. You're not an industrial designer, but you act like an industrial designer in many ways. So you're our honorary ID person tonight. You also were working directly with people and, you know, kind of sculpting, or can you talk more about that initial experience and how it translated?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll answer that in the context of the previous question about empathy as well, which is, I think, hugely important in any design. And, you know, for my design, similar to the designs for homelessness and for Alzheimer's, you can't necessarily fully put yourself into that position. I couldn't fully become an amputee, but part of the reason why I wanted to emphasize immersion is because just being with amputees, serving their needs for so long really helped me to understand their needs. And so I would say that for me, a huge aspect to what I've been able to do is attributed to the years of work of actually working with these people and knowing their needs very intimately.
So systems. I'm going to focus on chips because you guys really, for this next set of questions, you really thought about systems and developed a variety of systemic innovations. And I think also what Infinite Socket is, it's a complete system of delivery and manufacturing, and I might want you to kind of explain that more to our audience, and have really been at the forefront of this kind of mass, what do they call it, mass production, customization, mass customization. Why do you think it's important to address the entire system in the designs that came out of chips and also with Infinite Socket? I don't know, whoever wants to go first.
I guess I would answer that in the sense that like seeing a design or a project as an entire system is important because there are always so many moving parts, and like in the world and society, things are constantly changing. So when you step back and take all of the stakeholders within that system, I think it's important to then think about that and how they change as like a whole unit. And it's definitely difficult to change from the mindset of thinking about a product to a broader system because there are so many moving parts. And as Garrett was saying, like the immersion and being able to work with amputees for years, I think that's something I struggled with as a student, having one semester for a project. We weren't able to immerse ourselves as much as I would like to, just because we have deadlines. But I know, like for my project, it was very important for me to spend most of my time going to CHIPS and just observing the systems and sort of the connections CHIPS has with their broader community.
So as far as a system, why I think it's really important to address the full system is, I'll have to use a cliche and say that you're only as strong as your weakest link. And we've certainly found that to be true of our prosthetic systems. You know, we continue to iterate and improve our prosthetic systems, and the more we improve, new weak links are revealed. And so I would say that, you know, the most limiting factors will continue to step front, and that's what we continue to improve upon. And as I said, I don't think it's ever going to end. There's a great opportunity to continue to improve prosthetic sockets.
Yeah, just to remind people that what Infinite Socket was. It's a custom molded prosthetic socket. This is where the prosthetic connects to the human body, and it's designed with modular, easy to exchange components that adjust to the ever-changing human body. I learned this. I didn't realize, if you think about it, the body gains water, loses water, ages, changes over time. And so vastly, I mean, vastly improves the comfort level for people. I mean, it's like a game changer in this industry, if I understand. I'm not an expert in prosthetics, but it really is.
Yeah, there's never before been a modular socket system, so that was sort of, if there was an aha moment in the development, it was when I realized that in order to, there's these conflicting needs where each prosthetic socket needs to be custom for the individual because all of our bodies are so different, and moreover, amputations are all different. So there's the need for it to be customized, and yet in order to bring in modern manufacturing and modern materials, a lot of that is based out of production level manufacturing, and is usually or is often duplicative, advanced manufacturing is often conveyor belt style, where it's each product is the same. Our product is different. The modular solution allows for a lot of the components to be mass-produced or manufactured, but then our struts, our frame, is custom molded by, we created a manufacturing process where we have a renewable mold machine. It's an actuated surface that changes based on the computer input for that custom person and is molded to that custom person. But the parts that make up the socket can be mass-produced. So it's sort of this combo of mass-produced parts, but then they're customizable. So it gets into that, that mass customization aspect.
So both LIM Innovations and CaringKind teams' design iteration was employed. Can you tell me more about why this method, prototyping, testing, and refining the design a whole multitude of times is helpful? And while you were limited with the number of iterations simply by the length of the school semester, what were one or two key insights that you all discovered along the way?
Iterating as a student is very important, and one of the biggest things I've learned in my time at Pratt is you're going to have some failures along the way, and it's important to just fail faster. So to take every failure and learn from it, and then move on. And in my project, I was making a shelf that needed to be structural, but also made out of paper. So I had to do a lot of experiments with finding enough strength to keep essentially what's a giant pop-up card upright and sturdy, while also having it have a mechanical component. So iterating is definitely important, and it only strengthens the product's success if it were to eventually come to market, as we hope to do with some of these.
One thing I'm learning as a designer is to really reframe the idea of a prototype as a question rather than as an answer. And if a prototype is a physical embodiment of a question that you want to present to someone, you have to think about how you ask that question, whether you're asking too many questions at once. Is it a good question? Is it a question worth asking? So that's what I think about prototyping.
I have to say this was the joy of partnering with Pratt. Every student I met was brilliant. Every student. I mean, here they are. Garrett, you talked a little bit about TechShop. For those of you who don't know about TechShop, they're all over the United States. You can be a member of TechShop. They're kind of these hacker spaces that allow people. Research and development traditionally is done behind closed doors in companies, but as you know, that landscape is changing rapidly. And so it really allows anybody to kind of start up and start a business, and you can easily do a lot of rapid prototyping. And how important was it to have a space like this? And the reason we're talking about TechShop is that's I included TechShop in the exhibition and included a couple projects that came out of TechShop. one being infinite socket and the other one this kicker helper, which was for people who are in wheelchairs, kids, students who a teacher was trying to help them kick a ball because they couldn't kick a ball, and they prototyped it at a tech shop. But all these amazing products are coming out of this kind of democratic R&D space. How important was it for you to engage there?
Yeah, it was hugely important for the reasons I mentioned in my section of the talk. It was hugely important to keep overhead low and have access to these great machines. But even above and beyond this, something that you touched on a little bit is how many other people doing amazing things are in the space. And so it's really inspiring, and you learn a lot from working with these other designers and other people. And I certainly had that experience where, we were working on our project, but there was all kinds of really amazing people and products being worked on around us. And so that just helped incubate our ideas and just helped us evolve.
And I must say, if anybody wants to jump in, I've kind of thought about each one of the groups, but if any of you want to jump in at any time, please feel free to do so. So I think the statistics speak for themselves. There are 2 million amputees in the United States, 40 million worldwide. 5 million people are living with Alzheimer's, and another 20 million are caregivers here in the US alone. 15 million households are food insecure, and 500,000 people are homeless in the United States. This is a question to all of you. As you developed your designs, did you think about how they might scale up to serve a larger population? And did this affect the design? And if it did, how? So anyone?
I can start on this end this time. I'll take the brunt of it this time. Yes, scalability is certainly a huge aspect to the design. I think part of the motivation of creating a different way to skin a cat was seeing that there was limitations in the way that prosthetic sockets are made, in that they're not able to scale to a way that can incorporate some other opportunities, such as materials and machinery. And so, yes, it was integral from the beginning. And like design products, they continue to evolve, and same thing with the manufacturing process. It continues to evolve. So while certainly scalability has been considered since the beginning, it's not like that's something we just checked off and said, okay, we got scalability. It's just a continued process of improving our manufacturability and be able to scale it.
Well, I think what's impressive from this group is it sounds like CaringKind is going to begin to produce some of these, looking to produce some of these. And also, you've already received a grant to further expand your efforts. Maybe you can all talk about kind of where those are and talk a little bit more about those.
Yeah, definitely having it out there that these could potentially be made was very good to keep in mind from the beginning of the design process, which is why for mine I was looking at basically just one material, making the whole thing out of paper. And what's interesting about approaching designing for Alzheimer's is because you're dealing with designing somebody who is slowly losing their mind, is the simpler the product, actually the more successful it often is, which is great when thinking about potentially manufacturing things. So we didn't look at things that had a lot of technology. Almost nothing we presented today, short of maybe the clock, had some basic technology in it. Everything was very analog, very customizable. We were trying to keep all of our designs under $100. So scaling up was definitely a big part of the design process from the beginning.
I think hand in hand with scalability is accessibility. Under $100. As these things grow, we have to keep in mind that this has to be accessible to everyone, and sometimes mass customization can have a price tag associated with it. So we have to sort of balance those issues.
And for my project with chips, which I took it last spring, but it inspired me to continue it, and so I applied for a grant through a center we have at Pratt, and I've been working continually with CHIPS for the past...
What's the name of the center?
Pratt Center for Community Development.
Which has been around for, it's one of the longest centers for community development in the country, I think.
Yeah. So they offer a fellowship program, basically, and I thought I would try and apply for it, and I received the grant, which was very exciting. And I've been able, just the past half year that I've started the project, to get to know CHIPS better as an organization. And I've taken inspiration from my initial concept and honed in on the idea of establishing a compost program within the kitchen that would be received by community gardens in the area or through the New York City Organics Collection. And I will say it's very different to be working on a actual project now rather than a concept. And thinking about systems and all of the moving parts, I have already failed a lot, failed early and often, but I have learned a lot as well through the process.
And I want to add to, certainly for my project, for the shower program, since the beginning of the semester, we've been in conversation with CHIPS, and they were the ones who first suggested a need for this shower program, that they were already in contact with someone to realize this project. But we took it more from the design side, I guess, more prototyping and more speaking with the population directly. There's word that it might continue in the future, but for now, my entire design process is personally geared towards having this shower program outfitted at CHIPS. So all the technical issues I've run into, how to get the water running, or the costs, material use, that's all for personalized towards CHIPS. I've actually gone outside to the building and measured all the sidewalks and stuff in my process.
It's interesting because one of the projects in design by the people is Fresh Moves, a mobile market out of Chicago, and they retrofitted old city buses. So maybe there's a way to retrofit. I don't think you need a city bus, but maybe something smaller that exists.
Yeah, but I've actually done a research for a market research of shower programs around the world of what people have been doing. A lot of non-profit organizations are now popping up for specifically on shower programs. For me as a semester project, I couldn't go deeply into it, but there's Lava May from I think from the West Coast. They've been doing a lot of retrofitting buses, trucks, and trailers. There's also a lot of programs I think we've heard on the social media, shower for the people. This guy took a $5,000 box truck and converted it into a shower program. So there's a lot that have been popping up in the recent years.
That's great. I think we're almost ready for our audience Q&A, but I want to give a couple of closing remarks based on the wonderful conversation we've had so far. All of these examples presented tonight point to how design, whether it's triggering memory or empowering homeless women or improving mobility for amputees around the world, improves people's lives. Pratt prepares its students to become responsible professional designers, ready to tackle a myriad of challenges confronting us in the 21st century. And I think the work presented here tonight is evidence of that. So I'll open it up to the audience.
Are there any questions?
It was a really hopeful and beautiful presentation. I can't say it strongly enough. It's inspiring. And I have two questions, actually. In terms of your concepts that you're doing about with the showers and working with homeless, does Pratt in any way work with how to get it into a system in terms of government, or how do you make it real and put it on the street? Is that a teachable part of the process? That's my first question. My second question, which is about prosthetics, how does 3D printing with prosthetics compare to what you're doing?
I definitely agree with that question. Trying to think of how these systems can become a reality. And I think we have a new chair of industrial design that's been here with us like for a year and a half now. And I do think our program is developing more towards that and thinking more so of the reality of design and how we present ourselves as designers in society. And I think that means working with real issues in society, and potentially working with more disciplines, I think, would help solve that problem too.
So we use 3D printing, and we have used 3D printing, and we continue to use it. It's used in the base plate right now. The end pad at the end of the residual limb is 3D printed. And we used it a lot in prototyping. We see 3D printing as a tool, one of many manufacturing options, and we utilize it when it's applicable. And it'll continue to change, and it'll get more applicable to certain aspects. There are full prostheses that can be 3D printed, but we see that it's still somewhat limited in that you can 3D print a fixed cup, if you will, or fixed shape, but it can't change with the residual limb. And you can 3D print a designed socket that has built-in adjustability, but the materials at scale are not fast enough and cheap enough to be able to compete with what we can do. Another thing to emphasize here is that these prostheses see a ton of load, a ton of forces. And so they need to be very strong. And I don't think I could ever emphasize that enough. The engineers that I work with, I think they've really learned it when stuff breaks, you know. And it's like I saw it a lot as a prosthetist, seeing the feet that are made for amputees break. So I knew the amount of forces that go into these. And while I see great promise in 3D printing being able to integrate even more into our prosthetic socket systems, it's part of the picture, not the whole picture, in my opinion.
Oh, right in front of me, sorry.
Do I need to get up? Hi, everybody. How you doing? Great work, great presentation. Really big fan of what's happening here at Cooper Hewitt. I just want to tie in the Pratt and industry and business side of things. You know, there's a huge, amazing like product that you can design, right? And you can design it to the best. But if you're not tied into what's happening like socioeconomically, you're not going to be able to develop the process. And this is more in addition to your question: is at what point do you guys begin to talk about this as concept and then try to basically implement it in some kind of system? What kind of conversations are actually in the design room, in the exploration space, more importantly in the prototyping phase, always connecting it back to the industry? I'm fortunate to work for Limb Innovations.
One was our first employee, actually.
And
he is the designer by training.
And
that I've learned a lot of this from.
Thank you. And the idea is like, the more that you have those conversations initially, the better informed your design becomes to be an actually marketable, scalable, and more importantly, life-changing product. So maybe if you guys can talk about what Pratt does to basically build up that side of the design process.
Do you want to go ahead.
Sure. I mean, I think that's incredibly important, like you said, and one of the reasons why this project was so great to be a part of was from day one we were working with experts. We went to CaringKind multiple times. We talked to people who were training families and caregivers. So it really was a process that was well researched, and that's definitely something that is driven home. And a good thing about being a student is sometimes you have products that are very realistic and grounded, and sometimes you get to dream and you get to think of things that haven't been done before. And I think that's what's special about, as a student, being able to kind of work between those worlds. Because in the real world, partnership and research and cost is incredibly important. So I think that's one thing that Pratt does a good job in.
And I would kind of emphasize that. I think that's what school is. School has a lot to do with dreaming, keeping the dreamers alive. At the same time, you can ground that, but I do think keeping the dreamers alive. Thank you.
This is awesome. Good evening. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, products with us. Quick question, actually, you talked about design, the whole process. Just wanted to understand, you didn't talk about was constraints. I think you were kind of touching there. And I was about to ask each one of you, what were your constraints and how did you actually plan for that or design for that? And a little more emphasis I wanted from you. You talked about how do you prototype, and that was really interesting. How do you prototype for a question? So can you just elaborate that, because I missed it. I really found that very interesting. So needed a little more elaboration, and then the constraints. Thanks.
Well, I think sometimes prototypes can stay within the realm of the designer, right? We can stay in our classroom, in our studio, and we can sort of get isolated there. And I think reframing the prototype as something external is a way to start a conversation. And I think that's what's valuable in the design process is to have your ideas, to bounce your ideas off people and have your assumptions challenged. That was my thinking.
Speaking towards constraints, I would say for me, always a hard part of starting a project and exploring all of the ideas that I have, I always want to solve these huge, really broad, in-depth issues such as homelessness, which was very difficult to grasp my mind around, and how do I even approach that? How do I solve a solution for that? But really, it's difficult to pull yourself in and focus in on one specific thing, keeping in mind that many times that thing that you design or system, whatever it is, can also benefit many more aspects within the system. So like the project that I'm working on now is working to successfully divert the food scraps back into the cycle, but also trying to establish a more solid connection with CHIPS and their community.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a really good question, and I sort of lump the constraints aspect into knowing the needs, but I'm glad you mentioned that, because it, in my mind, the needs sort of create this framework with which you need to work within, but there's often a give and take with a lot of these attributes of a given product or design. And for example, in my company and in prosthetics, there's a give and take with regards to the need for structural integrity. Like I talked about, it needs to be strong, so it's safe for people. But yet, strong often requires a certain amount of bulk or thickness, and people don't want a big bulky thing. So it's this sort of give and take, and a solution for that is often, okay, well, we can make it out of really expensive materials. But if we make certain parts out of titanium, it gets to where it doesn't meet another constraint, which is accessibility, which is also mentioned. So it's sort of working within these different interrelated constraints. They're often not mutually exclusive, but rather interrelated. And I think it's just a process of finding the right happy medium where it's meeting the needs in the best way that it can. And the second aspect of your question, remind me, was there was constraints, and then there was the other aspect.
Actually, for him, I think you.
Yeah, you did mention the. Right. I do think that that was a really good point that you made, and I think designing for a question, you asked about that, and it made me think about how I've actually learned that a lot of design seems to be best approached as like a researcher, as opposed to if you're like, I'm the designer with the perfect solution, it often doesn't end up working as well as if you approach it like a researcher where you make a hypothesis. This is what I think will work. You can still put yourself out there with what you think will be best, but then being open to the fact that it might not be, and open to the results like a researcher is. Because an appropriate researcher, they don't alter the results based on what they want. They're open to finding what is true. And so I would encourage young designers to learn a lot about research design, because I think that's a key aspect.
Do we have time for one more?
So I think we have time for one quick question.
Mine's very quick. So the lessons learned in over 20 years of developing the prosthetic devices, in terms of stability. Over here on the left, I see a walker. I'm familiar with that walker. And then in the middle, your product. You've given a lot of thought to how to stabilize the body. Can we adapt what you've learned to what's on the left?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm actually very excited about the many areas of opportunity to integrate what I've learned about fitting to the human body to other areas. I see great opportunity not only in a prosthetic socket, but in the chairs that we sit in the cars that we drive, in where our body meets technology. And so I do think that there's great opportunity for that. And what I would also emphasize is that every need is different. Each area is specific, so really getting into, well, what is important about that walker? Boiling it down to like, what are the key aspects that product meets, or what needs is it serving? Then you can start to strip away the things that are not needed, or infiltrate other new designs that maybe improve upon what's provided.
I think that's it. Thanks so much for coming.